for
Yes.
thousands and thousands and
And
thousands
this
of
is the
years.
perfect segue. I'll bring up to you one of the things that, just before we forget,
Yeah.
or I forget rather, is one of the things that I've heard, and you may have heard this as well, is this is one of the, in a lot of states, and it's the problem that with the Fed's ambiguity here. Another reason to me why, all right, if the states are going to do as they will anyway, which that's the way things are headed, as you mentioned with marijuana. Well, with this, it is the only, at a high school, you got to get your parents' notification. They have to be notified before you even get an aspirin. Oh, but you can take my daughter, if I have one, my daughter can have an abortion without my consent. So it becomes a stickier issue there as well. And again, you mentioned the Catholic Church, and that's the biggest issue here. Is the church? It's kind of a jokey song now, but YMCA by the Village People, that does not exist anymore. Where you can go in and get clean and sober and get a hot meal and start your life over. They'll take $100 from you for a gym membership, but the church has relegated its role.
Yeah.
As in general, I'm generalizing here, but the church has relegated itself to the sidelines, somewhat due to the Great Society deals and whatnot. But this is stickier than I think than just removing God from this. With all due respect to the viewpoint, I think this becomes multifaceted real quick.
Yeah, and I definitely won't disregard the complexity of the entire thing. I think my big thing was, what do we do? Like, I think part of what I heard as an argument, and maybe this is a super microcosm of the overall argument, or just this specific place, region, or whatever the deal is, that the answer was God, and that if God was in more people's lives, then this wouldn't happen, or through God anything is possible, or kind of like the senator, I think it's from Michigan, who had said, well, if climate change is real, then God will have his will with it. And I just have a hard time, not necessarily for me, but for people who maybe lie a little bit more agnostically in atheist, that's just not an acceptable answer.
Well, let's have a point. Let's have a point of clarification here. And again, this is, you don't have to answer. We don't have to go this way if you don't want. But overall, do you reject that on the basis of being pro-choice? Because there's got to be a position to stake here in order to have this dialogue. I mean, everybody's free to change their mind and feel differently.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we expect our politicians to never ever change their minds. Like, once you say it, it is ridiculous.
It is.
Yeah.
It's
so
fundamentally ridiculous as a human being.
You're free to not state your position or to, but is this coming from I'm pro-choice and I see the hypocrisy here, and I don't see how we cannot put more in social aid and yet demand all these babies be born.
And this is why I've been asking lots of questions, because I don't.
You're not sure?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
I think we both agree we're anti-abortion.
Yeah, but I'm anti-abortion, or let's just pretend that I'm anti-abortion, because I want to.
Well, I don't like the idea of babies being aborted.
Yeah, fine. Well, I think the comedian Louis C.K. says it best. He's like, it's murdering a baby, but maybe it's not. Like, let's just pretend that it is.
It's an awful topic, regardless.
Let's just pretend that it is, and I will agree with you that it's murdering a baby. And you talk about that study and that video that they shot, and yes, I mean it is fundamentally stopping cellular life form.
I mean, we talk about, we found that there's a possible microbe we found on Mars that would suggest life. Yeah. Oh, but this zygote is not alive. But you can be charged with murder if you end its life by killing its mother.
It 100% is, but what I want, I don't know where we move forward if we continue to reject social platforms to help these people, because we can't say we'll just...
Right, I don't think that's the answer at all.
You can't just say, well, pull out or don't have sex. Like, abstinence is not the...
Because Americans are so good at being told to conserve. I mean, Jimmy Carter did it very well with wearing a cardigan.
It's not the answer. Like, unfortunately, as a healthcare provider, it's just not the answer, because we're human, and
Not when we're cramming it down. I mean, look at our culture.
yeah,
Look, we're cramming. There's more sex. So, I mean, earlier and earlier ages.
As taboo as it is portrayed, as much as it's portrayed in this society, and as much as it's taboo in this society, it's still a reality and it's still happening. And we can't. I'm just asking: is it okay to have your cake, which is the overturning Roe v. Wade, and eat it too, by then just not helping any of these people out? Because, and I'll make this my last little argument on this. But I challenge people to think about the financial burden that unwanted pregnancy, that human being who is born into a place where he can't take care of himself, and he's born into a pretty terrible environment, which is a lot of pregnancies. It's not just the frat house. It's not that. I mean, it happens on all socioeconomic statuses.
No, that was perhaps a bad example.
Well, I'm not trying to attack you on that, but it does happen. I'm just saying there's a broad range of socioeconomic statuses where this happens. Some people are more fortunate than others when it comes to those unwanted pregnancies. But I challenge people to think about the economic burden that one person creates to the system, especially.
Well, that's what cracks me up with the fiscal conservatives. I'm going, so let me get this straight. You believe, and this is absurd because we know it's not true, but you believe there's people with EBT cards buying alcohol and cigarettes, with your tax dollars. Again, that's not legal. If that's going on, that's not how the system works. Okay, so
of course,
we're not going to condemn the system because of people that break the law. But so you don't want that going on. But then you're okay with this unwanted pregnancy that comes to fruition, and the child is then added potentially to the welfare doles.
Yeah.
So it is an absurd argument. It's one of those, okay, pick a side and die for it type thing. So I'm with you there on the hypocrisy. We could agree on that it's a duality, or probably, more than that. And so it is something that I feel like perhaps an op-ed is in order. It is something that we need to have dialogue on, because I see it here.
Yeah, and I do think, I think I'd mentioned to you before, I think it is an op-ed that I'm going to do. And I think probably on the op-ed, I'll be able to articulate it a little better.
You articulate it fine. It's not easy to make this nuanced argument, because everybody wants to go immediately into this is murder or this is my body. I'm going, it's more than that.
It's way more complex.
It's a macroeconomic issue if you want to get cynical about it. But with that, we'll transition here into an area that you're obviously going to have discussions you're going to have more fun with. Is our second issue is Mr. Bill Maher, and I'll say, in the interest of full disclosure, his group, I don't know that he personally clicked the button, but his group is, from our tracking analytics, is the only late night host of any traffic-based significance that follows ModState and our multimedia work and editorial work. So I want to put that out there. That doesn't mean Bill Maher and I are on a first-name basis. I don't know that he's ever looked at specifically. I know that we've been sourced before. They all have writers. So I just want to put that out there before we, in case everybody is not aware, we're not going to play the clip, but Bill Maher had Republican Senator, I believe it's pronounced Sassy, S-A-S-S-E.
I think so.
Republican senator from Nebraska, who's actually been one of the more vocal GOP critics of President Trump from day one. I don't know that he was a never Trumper, but I know he's not really ever been on board, to my knowledge.
Yeah. In my research, I didn't dig that deep into it, but
he's pretty. I don't want to call him a maverick because that's such a cliche term. But anyway, so the senator was on the show, and Mr. Maher has long had a very caustic, acerbic sense of humor, and he also doesn't solely rely on writers. That's one of the big reasons he has source material given him, is because he ad-libs a lot. Well, in the course, yes, exactly. So we're setting this up here, and for those of you that have heard, just all these different things. Well, so it was a discussion about working together and making some change, and I forget the precise topic where it was headed, but the senator said to Mr. Maher, he said, well, why don't you come out in the fields and join us? And that was the exact word, fields, is what he used, and meaning come out into the mission field, so to speak. Come, join us in the streets. To which Mr. Maher used a very, from the era of Song of the South and Uncle Remus, he used an expression, I work in the house, I don't work out in the fields, and he used the N-word in that expression.
Yes.
So, to follow that real short synopsis, there are people from all sides, frankly, that have called for his head, called for, not literally, I hope, Kathy Griffin, but too soon, but calling for him to lose his job, and this is on the heels of Milo and Coulter.
Bill O'Reilly.
Yes.
Which is a little different. We'll get into that.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's different. But, Milo, Berkeley, basically, all this safe space stuff is going on with the Ivy League as well. I'm not here to hear different viewpoints. And here, basically, they want an echo chamber, which, as I mentioned prior, is really ironic. And I'm picking on the left here because most of these kids are leftists that I see, the vocal ones that are fighting with the Trump people. And it takes two to tango, okay? So the two groups fighting, I've seen it all, the fist fights on both sides. So it's both, two tango here. But so we come down to all of this fighting over this expression. And so first of all, what's your gut reaction to what he said? Obviously, we agree that it was number one, a dumb thing to say as a given his position, but it was the wrong thing to say.
It was.
He has apologized, and I viewed his apology. It seemed genuine. Nobody knows his heart, but
he's a human being. So
should he lose his career?
Look,
what's your feeling?
Coming from a centrist, middle of the playing field, I read it, and I went back and watched the clip, and it was. I think maybe if I had watched it live or had watched it on Saturday night or whenever it aired, I probably would have had the same gut reaction that I did when I read it, because it was, ooh, yep. You went down.
Senator Sassy's reaction is classic. I mean, he literally fringes. He wants to be anyone.
I mean, it was.
But there.
And I'll be honest.
So was you firing? Would you? I mean, what's your call?
Well,
what do you think should happen?
You don't fire the guy right then and there. He walks off the stage. He's in the green room. Like, man, like that didn't go down well. No, I don't think you fire the guy. And in the
where's that coming from? Calling for his career to end because of I mean, first there's a number of First Amendment issues to come up here. Maybe you shouldn't say something, but should we tell you can't?
No. So I don't think it's anyone at the studios. I think the studios realize immediately that we don't work on an ad revenue basis. I mean, and first off, we're comparing apples to oranges when I talk about Bill O'Reilly and Bill Maher. Bill Maher has never been accused and has never sexually harassed anybody. And I'm not trying to come to Bill Maher's defense, but I'm just saying we are comparing apples to oranges. He never sexually harassed or assaulted anybody. None of that ever happened. He said something in poor taste, which he apologized for later on. And I think
he's a comedian. Let's remember that.
Again, he's a comedian, and I've listened to far worse comedic sketches.
I've listened to far worse from all ethnicities. Okay, and I've already told you I'm more on the line, the wavelength of Winfrey when she a number of years ago she actually had somebody from the hip hop industry on her show talking about this, not Bill Maher, but the usage of the N-word. Yeah. And her personal stance was that I don't believe anybody should use that word. Now that's how I feel. I was raised in a household. The things that people can't change, their ethnicity, where they were born, if they're pretty or ugly, you don't hit people on that because they can't do anything about it.
Yeah, you don't attack any character character flaw on anybody, and certainly I'm not saying that being black is a character flaw. That's not it
No,
at all.
that's
But it's
not what
nothing.
you meant. So,
But it's not what you can't change it. I can't change being
right,
white, and I can't change. I mean, God bless him. Michael Jackson tried, but he's still black, man.
right. And he's still, I grew up obviously growing up in the deep South. My friends that were not Caucasian, the vast, overwhelming majority of them are black. Okay, and I don't, I never had to tell my parents, hey, by the way, I am bringing a friend home tonight, and he's black. No, I had to tell my parents I was bringing a friend home.
Yeah,
That's just
that's
the
it.
household that I was raised in.
Exactly. So
And so, what is the answer? What is the answer here as far as because I think what we're really coming to is this is not a defend Bill Maher moment. This is in my opinion, a First Amendment issue.
so
We're not talking about should he have said it. Obviously, we categorically agree he should not have. But should the man be essentially lose his career? It's almost like he should never write again or be heard from again ever.
yeah.
I mean, is that
And
really?
and that's so. I think I brought this question up to you earlier. Yes, Bill Maher has beyond just saying, "Senator, I'm a House, N-word." The guy has controversial viewpoints. I mean,
A lot.
He's kind of like a Sam Harris.
Do you think this was maybe a moment they smelled blood?
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's just
set
like,
that up for us. Why would that be the case for the uninitiated?
So you look at someone. I'm going to make a comparison to Bill Maher and Sam Harris Sam Harris has been on Bill Maher's show and was vehemently attacked by Ben Affleck about his views on Islam, and
which were like set this up for the uninitiated.
So
people.
So Sam Harris's viewpoints, and I think Bill Maher's are probably more. And I'm obviously speaking for both of them, which is ridiculous. But anyway, bear with me.
I asked you to. So
yeah. So Bill Maher, I think, is he's out to attack all religion on the same footing, and I think his viewpoints, his vocal viewpoints, are way more broad than Sam Harris. Sam Harris,
why does he? Yeah, why does he attack religions?
So he attacks religion because fundamentally they want something that goes against the freedom that this country was built upon. And
why is Islam so particularly sensitive? Because he obviously he got into it with an Islamic lady over the state of Israel. I mean, this is not the first time.
No, and so again, the whole point of this is that Bill Maher is about the biggest liberal champion that is out there, and I mean that because you can't pick
on the progressive side.
He's like staunch atheist, socially progressive, and unfortunately, religion falls under the umbrella of non-socially progressive. It just does.
Unfortunate, given all the scientific advancements, in spite of what people are told, that happened during the Renaissance and the intellectuals that were in the church, and the man that actually uttered the Big Bang was a member of the Catholic clergy trying to explain.
Of course,
that's a shame.
And I won't. I'll be the first to tell you that there's plenty of religious scientists out there. I know them, and you can look them up.
If you don't believe in God, then all of a sudden you're an intellectual.
Yeah, or if you believe in God, you're not an intellectual. That's not the case. The point is, as someone who would consider themselves a liberal or a progressive, really what you're doing is you're cutting out religion, because religion, like we kind of talked about in abortion, fundamentally has a belief system and an ideology that's geared one way.
Right, so you don't agree with it, so you're going to alienate everybody and then turn around and wonder why you lost an election to Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, I get that. So people like Bill Maher and Sam Harris, that they say that they fundamentally are against all religion. The thing is, and the reason it gets controversial is because, and we can have a whole nother debate about this, but as much as the Christian religion is doing certain things that are insidious, I guess, if you will, if you're a progressive, it's insidious. They're not running vans into crowded groups of people, and they're not shooting up nightclubs, and they're not shooting up restaurants, and they're not. So it becomes an easy target for people like Bill Maher and Sam Harris. And so
specifically Islam?
Islam.
Okay.
And so I think that
we do, in the interest of fairness here, I do want to say that I consider what Dylan Roof did in South Carolina to be a terrorist act.
100%.
Okay, I
The
just want to put that
gentleman
out there.
and the gentleman, how dare I say, the man that
Monster.
savage in Portland did the same thing. Whether it was under the guise, I mean, it was a racially driven. Whether we'd like to put at, I mean, I don't care if it was religious or not. Like, it still happened, and I'll never deny that. I mean, I'll never say
The
no.
point is, the majority of these modern terrorist acts are committed by generally young men, roundabouts our age, who happen to ascribe to a more severe variant
of Islam,
often Sharia law of Islam.
Yes,
that's the point, and that's what Bill Maher has driven home.
Exactly, and so
so he's made some enemies on the left.
Of course, yeah. So he's made, just like Sam Harris has made enemies, and again,
why the sensitivity in defense of Islam? Now, I must ask that of my friends on the left. Like, why does it get a pass
because it doesn't
to condemn the state of Israel?
It doesn't appear that he's allocating all of his energy to all of the religions, and so that's the whole point. How can we be? How can
they want equal thirds?
We want equal. I mean, if we want to talk about the three, Judeo-Christian, Christian, and Islam or Muslim religion, but you're one individual. You can't allocate all your resources. What was the best way you described it? Walter Reed, when we talked about if everything was number one priority,
right?
Nothing.
If everything's priority one, nothing. You can't have everything being number one priority, and I get that. I find it curious that oftentimes it is colleagues on the left who despise the state of Israel, who without fail love to ridicule Christians, and oftentimes they're feminists, and I actually happen to be one myself, but they're feminists who then come to the aid of people that have and I'm not talking about Islam as a faith. I'm talking about these specific monsters have no regard for a woman's rights. They don't think, I mean, in Saudi Arabia, for instance, and that's a country, but a woman can't drive. Okay, so doesn't it seem a little hypocritical to you?
So, and I guess in the defense of Bill Maher and Sam, I think that's probably the argument, one of the arguments that they would make.
Right.
So,
I've seen him make that argument.
So that's the question. So who is, so there's two types of people making that are calling for Bill Maher's firing or to him to be censored. So let's get the first one out of the way, and we can be done with it, because the more perplexing one is what you just described. These same people that would be willing to fall on the sword for somebody who in that country may not care about their rights as a female, the right. Because I think conservatives, and I'm generalizing again, but are just sick and tired of this liberal, politically correct agenda, and we've seen it over and over. We saw it with the firing of Bill O'Reilly. It was probably justified for sexual harassment, but a lot of people on the right found it like an attack to censor and stop a conservative talk show host. The second would be, of course, so Milo going to Berkeley, and then Ann Coulter. Now, it's you have to ask, at what cost are we doing what we're doing to try to censor these people? So in the case of Bill Maher, he, without the religion side of this, is probably one of the better liberal champions for social progressivism, and so at what cost do you want him fired? Like, the guy apologized for what he said, and he knows it was in poor taste. He's probably not going to do it again. If you fire him, at what cost? You lose that platform, and you lose that voice who so eloquently puts forth kind of the ridiculousness of what's going on in society nowadays, on the left and the right. And we talked about, and I'm going roundabout here, but we talked about too. We talked, well, how's the guy going to get fired? I mean, HBO is not run on ads, and most people aren't going to stop their subscription to HBO because Bill Maher said something bad. But I didn't realize it until I saw today that Al Franken is backing out now for going on the Bill Maher show. Which he was a regular at the time, or up until now. And
you're talking about Senator Franken from Minnesota, the former
Minnesota.
He was kind of the left, just for the uninitiated. He was kind of the left's answer to Rush Limbaugh, and now he is I believe, the senior senator from Minnesota now. But anyway,
I would think so. Anyway, he, he's pulled out, and that's a huge blow because that was an amazing platform for that guy to speak. And he wasn't really speaking to conservatives, but he was speaking to liberals, and he was able to push that progressive platform out there. And so it's kind of a bummer that, I mean, I get why he did it, but
this comes down to a First Amendment issue for me. Remember, we're talking about a comedian who, he slipped up. Obviously, everybody agrees, any rational thinker agrees, that was not, number one, a kind thing to say. Number two, it was a dumb business thing to say. But is it worth ending the man's career? Because my answer is, so don't watch his show. You don't want to hear Milo speak. You don't want to hear Ann Coulter speak. Don't go hear him speak. Not that those two have said the N-word, it's not in the same, but the song remains the same here. To me, this is it's not a simple issue, but it can be simplified to a First Amendment issue of, I forget, we were talking about it earlier. I don't know if it was Thurgood Marshall, but it was a Supreme Court justice, I believe, that said that the purpose of the First Amendment is to protect that speech which we hate.
And that was
which we despise.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I think we talked about that.
And so that's where it comes down to. I say these things. I'm not a huge fan, but I know that he sourced our material, not Thurgood Marshall, but Mr. Maher has sourced our material for. That'd be interesting.
That would be crazy.
He's sourced our material for it, so I'm not saying this in his defense. This is more of a how far does this line go? So anybody, so what? So a black comedian says cracker or calls French people frogs? Because a slur is a slur is a slur.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it. One's more offensive here than another, but
yeah.
Jesse Jackson called New York City derisively, and because my Jewish heritage or Hebrew heritage in part, I don't have a problem saying this, but Jesse Jackson called New York City Town. Okay, which is a horrible thing to say. Okay. Louis Farrakhan has said horrible things about Jews, and nobody's saying they can't ever speak again. So I'm not trying to say, well, they did it, so bloodletting's okay. No, but are we going to just fire everybody, get a call for everybody's career that says something that offends us?
No, and you run into a slippery slope as well, and in this case, it's the left attacking the left. And we already talked about conservatives. I mean, we're legitimately we finally have that guy. Liberals keep talking about how they can do no wrong, and we finally have a guy that slipped up. And so, why would you not attack him? But for liberals, I mean, we all make mistakes, and I understand that he has this platform and he should be watching what he's saying. But again, we go back to this: he's a comedian, he's not a senator, and I hope it blows over so he can have his platform again. But it also comes down. We were talking about freedom of speech, and we need to be careful about who we want fired when people say certain things. I mean, in the context of Berkeley and having people like Milo and
who's a provocateur? He's a shock jock.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. For context of
to me, he's along the lines of a Michael Savage type.
Sure.
Maybe.
And my point with him is, I don't agree. I don't agree with what he says, or most of it, and Coulter as well. They are shock jobs, but they win when we censor them.
Exactly, and I think that. Thank you for bringing that, because that reminds me of what I told you. It's a perfect, or you said it was a perfect analogy, but I feel like it's a good way. So and we'll move on to our third topic once we hear your final. What's your thoughts on this are? But there's a number of years ago, around about, I believe, the turn of the millennium, and our listeners can check this out on Wikipedia, a number of sources with it, but. The state of California was preparing one of those Welcome to California type bureau brochures or some sort of promotional deal for the state. And in taking skyline photographs or aerial photographs of the coast,
Of the coast,
inadvertently took a picture of Barbara Streisand's Malibu home. Well, upon finding this out, I don't know if a publicist found it out, who found it out, but they pointed it out to her, and she immediately went, "Oh, no, no." So Miss Streisand had lawyers, of course, or perhaps a lawyer, go to the state and say, "No, we're not going to have it." Well, as a result of her using legal action to suppress this photo being used, consequently, an immeasurable amount of people found out about this ordeal and ended up looking up her home. This was before viral was used in the way it's used now, but ended up looking at her home. And so now an impossible amount of people saw the home, more than would have ever seen it had she not sued. So that's another thing here is I didn't even know Milo was speaking at Berkeley. And it was the easiest check he ever got because he had to show up, there was a riot, and he left.
Yep. Well, and then who came in right after that was Ann Coulter, and whether it was on her tour or not, and there was a reason they went there too. Let's be
of course. I mean, and she canceled the date, so it's obvious. To me, the one that really went over the line, and I go back to, and maybe this is a military thing, but I think this is more a civility thing, to learn to respect the position over someone's personality. The group that I forget where, you might recall, but Vice President Mike Pence gave a commencement address recently, and some of the students, not all, turned their backs on him during the speech. And I understand disagreeing with someone, but I went to hear back in 2008 when she was campaigning against then Senator Obama. I went to hear someone I didn't agree with, Senator Hillary Clinton, but I still went to hear her speak out of respect, and she was in my area. And I showed up rather early at the train depot to hear her, and she gave a good speech. But the point is, you show that respect, and I feel like that was an overtly disrespectful act to turn their back. I mean, that's what the English do to the Scottish national team when they play international soccer games. It was a sort of blood feud type gesture to make, and I feel like it was overtly disrespectful. So I wonder, this has gotten out of control.
I wonder a little bit with Mike Pence, honestly. That those individuals felt like they had to be there, and it's their commencement speech, it's their graduation, and
you don't have to walk.
And I realize that, and I don't. Again, I wouldn't have known Mike Pence was even doing the commencement speech, but now I know because everyone walked away.
Right, because a group of people decided, in my opinion, to show their ass.
Yeah.
Pardon my French, but by saying, okay, I'm not going to be mature enough to sit here and listen to this speech.
Yeah, and I think 1,000 people before me have echoed this or have said this, and I'm echoing it now. College is a place, and university is a place to hear things that you don't want to hear. I mean, there's no other platform. Once you hit adult life, you can do whatever you want. And of course, being in university is an adult life, and you can hear whatever you want. But that's the place. That's where research happens.
That's where you grow.
That's where you grow.
Not just college, but in life, when you have to do things as basically even make this real simple as push-ups. It's painful, but it's growth. So I'm not saying that reading Mein Kampf is stimulating beyond on an intellectual level. Okay, but yeah, there's a capital comma here, if you will. Conversely, hearing things sometimes, you know what, I don't know about everybody else, but I found out, hey, I was misinformed in this, or I was wrong about this, and here's why, and I'm glad I read or watched whatever. So this goes to a fundamental, okay, number one, you don't want to hear Bill Maher's show, don't listen to it, all right? You don't, I get it, the commencement address thing is stickier, but I personally, if it was George McGovern, someone I am completely disagree with, I wouldn't have turned my back on him. That's such an overt display of disrespect that I feel like it discredits that movement when you act like that.